This Week in Pro Football is brought to you by Hager Slacks. They just fit better naturally. By American Motors and your local American Motors dealer.
Hi, I'm Pat Summerall.
And I'm Tom Brookshire.
This week in the first half of our show, we'll see how the Green Bay Packers bounced back for their first win.
We'll also see how the Oakland Raiders failed to bounce back for their first win.
And we'll see how 4 teams remained unbeaten.
That would be the Lions, the Cowboys, the Denver Broncos, and the Chicago Bears.
We'll be back with all these games and more right after this message.
In Detroit against the Lions, a hearty group of Bengal fans hoped that their big orange machine could repeat the miracle they'd seen against Oakland the previous week. Apparently, the Lions thought it was a brunch invitation because they brought their big blue waffle machine. The Lions' defense has been good for many years, and the personnel on this year's team is relatively unchanged. But the way they've manhandled their first 2 opponents this year, they've been nothing short of staggering. The Lions' rush forced errors all afternoon. Jerry Rush, number 82, recovered a fumble that was converted into Detroit's first touchdown. Until the final minute of the game, the closest the Bengals got to a score was the Detroit 35. 2 plays later, Dick LeBeau intercepted, and that was it until the closing seconds. What is really different about this year's Lion team is the offense. It's just as good as the defense. With Mel Farr, number 24, healthy and sliding through defenders, and Aldi Taylor, number 42, dancing and scurrying for long yardage, the Lions are now able to control the ball for longer periods of time, allowing the defense to rest. The Lions have previously had bad luck in keeping Farr and the other running backs healthy, but Mel has never looked better, and neither have the Lions. If the Lions' defense and the running of Mel Farr was a double-edged mortal blow, then the coup de grace was delivered by Lem Barney, number 20, as the brash defensive back scooped up a rolling punt and shot 61 yards to a touchdown, his second score of the year. There's no question about it. The Lions are thinking about big orange machines, but they're the kind that you can find in Miami, especially around January.
Meanwhile, in San Diego, Charger coach Charlie Waller wasn't thinking as much about Miami in January as he was how to handle this year's mystery team, the Oakland Raiders. With Player of the Year for 1969 quarterback Darryl LaMonica and a plethora of talent at every position, the Raiders lost 4 of their preseason games, then lost their opening game to Cincinnati. In the first quarter, the Raiders hardly resembled the team that had lost only 4 games in the past 3 years, as they executed several out-of-character maneuvers. The Chargers, who always play well against their Northern California rivals, took immediate advantage and began unloading on Oakland runners and receivers. The Chargers have been achieving below their potential, but quarterback John Hadle, number 21, is off to a good start. And with help from Gary Garrison, number 27, and Willie Frazier, number 83, the Chargers got off to a 10-3 first-half lead. Following Garrison's touchdown, the only mystery surrounding the Raiders was how to stop them. LaMonica found Warren Wells, number 81, alone as usual, and 2 plays later, Pete Banaszak ran 1 yard to tie the score. "2 minutes and 5 seconds later, LaMonica pass to Fred Biletnikoff, number 25, for another touchdown. The Raiders increased their lead to 27-13 midway in the fourth quarter on a pass to Wells and another one-yard plunge by Banaszak. As exciting as the game was, the apparent Oakland laugh-in turned into another hair-raising experience for them as Hadel and the Chargers were anything but finished. He lofted a prayer that Jeff Queen, number 47, answered for a 65-yard touchdown. Then, with 2 minutes left, the incomparable Lance Allworth, number 19, shook loose, and Hadel was right on for a 37-yard touchdown that tied the game 27-all. Oakland had a chance to win with 9 seconds left, but the field goal attempt was wide. So, with the season 2 weeks old, neither the Chargers nor the Raiders have won a game. And as a result, they share the cellar in the AFC West. But how long can that last?
For every starting quarterback in the NFL, there's a backup leader waiting in the wings for his call. Last week, the Packers and the Broncos both needed last-minute rescue, and they both came up with a winning reliever.
In Denver, the young Steelers hoped to begin a new tradition. The style, however, was strangely reminiscent of Pittsburgh past as Denver took over. Number 44, Floyd Little, is quick enough to veer outside and sturdy enough to turn upfield and get the tough yardage. Little rocked to the one, and then Willis Crenshaw made his own way in. Denver had the quick lead, but one play completely reversed the momentum. Punter Bobby Walden surprised the Broncos with this quick toss to Dave Smith. A Dick Hoke touchdown and 2 Gene Mingo field goals gave Pittsburgh the advantage, but the Bronco defense still had something to say. Rookie Terry Bradshaw, number 12, continued to have his regular season problems. Number 56, Dave Washington, brought Denver back, but Steve Tenzie put on the clincher. Tenzie entered the game for starter Pete Lisk and sent a 40-yard shot to Bill Van Heusen. Tenzie's relief pitching vaulted Denver back into the lead, and with more than a quarter remaining, the rest was up to the Bronco defense. Again, it was rookie Dave Washington leading the assault. The 9th-round draft choice was everywhere, finishing off Bradshaw and the Steelers for good with a perfect blitz. The energetic young Broncos had earned their second straight victory and sole possession of first place in the AFC West.
Meanwhile, in Green Bay, Norm Van Brocklin and the Falcons had come to see if the Packers were the peace-loving team that their 40-0 loss to Detroit indicated they were. The signs of love were everywhere in the stands, and even the once staunchly hard-hat Green Bay fans made signs for the peaceful style of football. However, on the field, the Packers, led by number 53, Fred Carr, had different ideas. It was easy to see why Packer fans loved Bart Starr as he hit number 84, Carroll Dale, for the game's first score. Then it was Starr to Dale again on a great fingertip reception. The catch set up the first of number 44, Donnie Anderson's 2 touchdowns. And the Pack led 20-3. The Falcons finally got going on the strong arm of number 17, quarterback Bob Berry. Then rookie Sonny Campbell, number 45, started sprinting and ended up limping in for one Falcons score. Berry to number 5, Harmon Wages, brought Atlanta closer. And it looked as though the Packers were once again displaying their peaceful attitude toward the opposition. Rookie Todd Snyder, number 80, made a diving catch all alone in the end zone, and Atlanta led 24-20. But Stars backup, number 13, Don Horn, entered the game and showed some of that old-time Green Bay aggressiveness. He unloaded an 89-yard strike to Carroll Dale, and with the 27-24 win, the Pack came back, at least a little bit. We'll have more exciting action on This Week in Pro Football right after this brief message.
Well, Pat, I was up in Chicago and watched number 51, Dick Butkus, operate at middle linebacker. It reminds me that the linebackers, middle linebackers in particular, are just a breed unto themselves, from Joe Schmidt to Bonaconte, Connors, Tommy Nobis, Butkus, Ray Nitschke, a friend that I had a little trouble with once when I called him a madman on the air.
I recall that.
You know, they're pretty tough. But we used to have one in Philadelphia named Chuck Bednarik, and they used to call the team together before the kickoff. And, you know, that's a pretty tense moment for a professional football player. And he would make us all get together into that little huddle that they do on the sidelines, and we would say a prayer for both ball clubs, praying for safety and all, and then Chuck Bednarik would turn and say, now let's kick the hell out of them. It's that kind of a game.
I bet a lot of people have been wondering what goes on in that little huddle just before kickoff time, and that's what most teams do, is have a prayer.
That's right.
What's coming up next time?
Well, we have two unheard of passing combinations in two different ball games, unheard of by me at least. Rensel to Hayes, Bull to Gordon, and Bull to Cole. Let's look at those games right now.
In Chicago, the young Philadelphia Eagles were told an old children's story. It was the story of the Beauty and the Beast. Number 51, Dick Butkus, and the 10 other little horrors of the Bear defense worked over Cyril Pender, number 22, and Lee Bogus, number 46, the two Eagle setbacks. The story had a happy ending as the Beast met the Beauty and fell head over heels in love with him. While the big bad Bears were brutal, they were also beautiful as quarterback Jack Concannon led the Eagles on a merry chase. Though outgained and outfought for most of the day, Chicago made the big plays. Wobbly halfback passes somehow found their mark when the Bears were desperate. The Eagles' offense connected on plays seemingly designed on a sandlot. The Bears' most demoralizing play was performed by Cecil Turner, who ran the opening kickoff back 96 yards for a touchdown. Just the week before, Turner had scored on a 95-yard return against the New York Giants. Philadelphia quarterback Norm Snead was brilliant, hitting on 24 of 33 passes. Behind 7-0, he led the Eagles to their first score with this touchdown pass to Gary Ballman. When an option pass from Ronnie Bull to Dick Gordon fooled the Eagles a second time, the Bears gained a 17-9 advantage with but a quarter to play. Snead drove Philadelphia to within 1 point of Chicago as first he speared Ballman at the Chicago 12, then cannily sent Lee Bogus pirouetting through the Bears on a delay for a touchdown. Within 1 point at 17-16, the Beast rose up to smite Philadelphia. Dick Butkus, number 51, crept up into the line, and untouched, he blitzed the Eagles' last hope. Mac Percival's field goal sealed the Bears' second straight victory. With no time left, the Beast had 20, the Beauty 16, as the lights went out on Philadelphia.
In Dallas, New York Giants head coach Alex Webster primed his defense to stop Cowboy quarterback Roger Staubach. The lusty hitting Giants wrapped every Dallas running back in sight and caused the computer-like Cowboys to lose their cool. Walt Garrison, number 32, learned never to turn his back on the aroused Giants. The Giants secondary double-covered number 22 Bob Hayes, and Spider Lockhart alertly intercepted Staubach's underthrown pass and whirled past the wheezing Cowboys. While the Giants' defense was intimidating Dallas receivers, Fran Tarkington, number 10, shrewdly manipulated the New York attack. He either threw under the touchdown-conscious Dallas secondary or alertly turned busted plays into long gains. Giants built a 10-0 halftime lead when Ron Johnson followed number 65 Pete Case over linebacker Leroy Jordan for a touchdown. But Giant hopes for an upset fizzle in the second half as the methodical Cowboys manhandled Tarkington and the Giants. The Cowboys were sparked by Cliff Harris, number 43, a rookie safety from Ouachita University, who intercepted 2 passes, recovered a fumble, and burned out 2 computers trying to locate Ouachita University for the New York Giants scouts. The Cowboys' first score resulted from blocks by number 84, Pettis Norman, and number 72, Tony Licio, and Calvin Hill's power running. Walt Garrison never looked back in anger as he cut behind number 70, Rayful Wright's crushing block on Ken Parker, and cruised 18 yards to a touchdown. Leading 14-10, the Dallas Cowboys unveiled a weird flanker reverse pass from Lance Rensel to Bob Hayes that traveled 56 yards to a touchdown. The usually unemotional Cowboys, inspired by the Mod Rensel and driven by Staubach, scored a final time when Jolly Roger speared Bob Hayes with a bullet, as the Dallas Cowboys' 4 touchdowns in the second half buried New York 28-10.
We'll be right back to This Week in Pro Football following station identification. This is the HSN Television Network. In the second half of our show, we'll see how Don Shula's Dolphins earned their first win.
We'll also see how the surprising San Francisco 49ers remained unbeaten.
And we'll see how defense saved first wins for the Jets and Cardinals.
And we'll see how two of pro football's top defenses earned shutouts.
And in our feature coming up next, we'll spotlight one of the greatest defensive lines in football history.
We'll see that feature, and we'll have more exciting action on This Week in Pro Football right after this brief message. Two great defensive teams were nearly perfect last week as both the Vikings and the Rams registered shutouts. And both teams' offenses needed all the help they could get.
Viking fans have become accustomed to defensive perfection. And last Sunday, the New Orleans Saints were quickly indoctrinated. Togetherness is the creed of the Purple Gang, and the front four crowded into the Saint backfield as a unit. The Saints' first half effort was worth a total of 11 yards. Togetherness also means demon dedication by the Viking special teams. Saint punter Julian Fagan found Carl Kasulki's chest where the ball should have been, and number 45 Ed Schirachman gathered in the touchdown. New Orleans refused to play dead, and number 17 Bill Kilmer finally found sanctuary from the Viking rush. But even time could not buy success as linebacker Lonnie Warwick, number 59, took his turn to wander through the befuddled Saints. The interception and a fumble recovery set up two Fred Cox field goals as the Minnesota defense and special teams accounted for the entire first half scoring output. In the third quarter, the Viking offense finally asserted itself on a Gary Quazzo strike to Clint Jones, who left Saints strewn all along his 72-yard track. Viking scoring responsibilities were returned to the offense as Quazzo sprinted out, up, and over from the 3. But even this gesture was lacking as a violation nullified the touchdown. The Vikings had to find other ways to score, so they returned to their first half pattern. Consistent Fred Cox was ready again. Also remaining on alert were the special teams. This time, Fagan attempted a novel 10-step approach. The results were nearly identical, with number 55, Mike McGill, getting the touchdown. The Minnesota Vikings know what togetherness can mean. On this day, the offense had failed, but the team had found out that there are many ways to win.
As resident relic of the late American Football League, Buffalo's War Memorial Stadium had showcased some fine teams, including the Bills' own championship squads of the early 60s. But now the Bills were rebuilding, and last week the old stadium hosted a new dynasty. The Los Angeles Rams stalked into Buffalo studded with stars, an odds-on favorite for a January Super Bowl engagement. They were led by Roman Gabriel, an Oakland quarterback who can pick up a team by his stature alone. Gabriel is respected, but the Ram defense is legend, especially number 75, Deacon Jones, and number 74, Merlin Olsen. These men rank with the finest defensive linemen in pro history. As a tandem on the same rush line, they presented the ultimate challenge to the young Bills. Buffalo quickly found the legend to be reality. It's one thing to read about the Ram pass rush, but it's another to experience it. The brute force of Jones and the sheer speed of Olsen crushed the Buffalo attack at its source. In an effort to temper the searing Ram rush, number 10, Dan Dara, tried to screen. This was a day when the Ram defense could do no wrong, They permitted the Bills to cross the 50 only 3 times. And in the end, the Rams recorded their first regular season shutout since 1954. As the victim, the callow Bills were pressured, pursued, and finally put away for the count. As it turned out, the Ram offense needed plenty of help. The usual crisp Los Angeles execution went flat as both Les Josephson and Larry Smith missed the game because of injuries. While the defense remained godlike, the Ram offense proved to be merely mortal, and the Bills began to exert direct pressure. The harried Gabriel felt Buffalo pressure all afternoon, and the usually consistent Ram attack sputtered erratically. Briefly, the offense flared to life on a Gabriel slant pass to Jack Snow. The burst quickly cooled, however, and Jack Snow was caught from behind, and the Rams had to settle for one of 4 David Ray field goals. The only Los Angeles touchdown came on a 4-yard bolt by number 33, Willie Ellison. It seemed a paltry sum for the explosive Ram attack, but on the day of defense, 19-0 was more than enough.
Tom, I was at that Ram-Buffalo game last week in Buffalo, and the Rams are an impressive outfit, particularly on defense. That defensive unit has got to be one of the most experienced that's ever played. In fact, 7 of their starters, 7 of the 11, have had 9 or more years in the league. It's really unbelievable. It's a unit that George Allen, their coach, has worked with for a long time and done his best to keep together. In fact, Eddie Mitter, their fine safety man, was telling me after the game that he had made up his mind to retire last year and play no more football. He'd moved back to Texas. And George Allen kept sending him clippings out of the paper talking about dust storms and tornadoes in Texas. He said, you better get back to Los Angeles. This is where the good life is and the good weather is. But George has got a lot of pride, and so does that defensive unit. In fact, both of their safety men, Richie Pettibone and Eddie Mitter, have 12 years in the league. I don't think that's ever been matched.
Well, it shows you how good they are to play 12 years back there where they throw those bombs.
It's unbelievable.
What's next, Pat?
2 games last week were decided by key interceptions. And let's look at those games right now.
In Harvard Stadium, the largest Boston crowd in 4 years saw their temporarily undefeated Patriots throw some surprises at the New York Jets. Number 35 fullback Jim Nance swept for 1 score, and his running mate Carl Garrett, number 30, last year's Rookie of the Year, continued his current campaign for Sophomore of the Year. Another scintillating sophomore also gave the Jets nervous fits. He was wide receiver Ron Sellers, number 34. Ron Sellers may be the best young receiver in pro football. Despite the brilliance of the Patriots' second-year sensations, the Jets won the game because Joe Namath played it cool against Cleve Rush's varied defenses. He passed sparingly, hitting tight end Pete Lammons for 1 short touchdown among only 9 completions. For most of the day, Namath rammed the ball at the Patriots with his matched pair of powerbacks Matt Snell and number 32 Emerson Boozer. But the Jets' game savers were 3 timely interceptions. 1 Boston drive was stopped by number 48 safety Gus Holloman. The ultimate game breaker was a 36-yard interception touchdown by rookie cornerback Earlie Thomas, number 45. as the Jets rebounded from their opening game loss 31-21.
Meanwhile, in St. Louis Bush Memorial Stadium, strange things were happening. It all started sensibly enough when another flashy sophomore, number 43, Larry Brown, led the Redskins to a 10-0 lead over the Cardinals. The NFL's fourth leading rusher last year, Brown thrust himself toward the top again with 114 yards against St. Louis. But from 10-0 on, nothing went right for the beleaguered Redskins. It was another frustrating day and what has seemed like a year of frustration for Washington. The Cardinals, too, had their moments of frustration. Quarterback Jim Hart engineered a perfect screen pass touchdown to number 36, MacArthur Lane, but an offside call nullified the play. In the second quarter, Jim Hart himself was nullified by linebacker Harold McClinton, number 53. Hart's replacement, number 10, former Oiler and Chief Pete Beathard, found some frustration too, as he hit number 44, smooth-striding John Gilliam for an 85-yard touchdown, which was also nullified by a penalty. But Beathard found the path to victory in third-year running back MacArthur Lane, who carried for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns, which counted. For an additional touchdown, Beathard faked to Lane and passed to number 23, running back Johnny Rowland. But like the Patriots, the Redskins were finally done in by key interceptions, one by number 20, former Oiler Miller Farr. The clinching interception came about when safety Jerry Stovall, number 21, cut in front of Walter Roberts and set up the Cardinals' final touchdown. MacArthur Lane put St. Louis over the top with a 27-17 victory, which will not soon be forgotten by Lane, by Pete Beathard, or by a lucky-to-be-alive Cardinal named Jim Hart.
There's one thing a quarterback would rather do than lead his team to victory, and that is to lead his team to an upset victory. Last week, both Bob Greasy and John Brody had that pleasure.
The rumblings heard in the vicinity of Kezar Stadium last week were not caused by an earthquake, but rather they were caused by a vastly improved San Francisco team that left the Cleveland Browns with the impression they'd been involved in an upheaval. The 49er offense, led by number 12, quarterback John Brody, and number 40, Ken Willard, was superb. But the Browns were not hapless victims. Number 44, Leroy Kelly, was as dangerous as always. Kelly's running set up a touchdown by number 35, Bo Scott, which tied the game at 7. The 49ers came right back to take the lead on a quarterback's nightmare. An interception and touchdown by number 32, Mel Phillips. Then it was John Brody again on a beautiful pass to number 24, Jimmy Thomas, that increased the San Francisco lead to 21-10. However, the seesaw began to tilt the other way as quarterback Bill Nelson, number 16, arched a bomb to wide receiver Fair Hooker, number 43. And after watching this second-year man perform, who could blame the Cleveland fans if some of them are saying, Paul who? But no one was asking Leroy who, as number 44 burst through right guard for the touchdown that put Cleveland ahead 24-21. A year ago at this time, the 49ers might have rolled over and played dead. Instead, Ken Willard rolled over and the 49ers were on top again. The game began to take on the aspects of a ping-pong match as Cleveland stormed back. Nelson hit Fair Hooker on this play, but was himself injured and forced to leave the game. Reserve quarterback Don Gaup, number 11, came in, handed off nicely to Kelly, and with time fleeting, the Browns led again. But this may be the year San Francisco doesn't fold under that type of pressure. John Brody proved it as he put one right on the money, and Jimmy Thomas began the post-game victory celebration as the 49ers outlasted the Browns 34-31. Future opponents should beware the rumblings in San Francisco.
In Houston's spacious Astrodome, there were grumblings to be heard instead of rumbling. And the grumbling came from Oiler quarterback Charlie Johnson, number 12, who had a right to be upset by the way the Miami Dolphins defense was treating him. Led by number 75, Manny Fernandez, the Miami quarterback Crushers caused problems for Johnson all afternoon. When they didn't physically get to him, they forced him to rush his passes. Then, when he was able to complete a pass, the hard-hitting Dolphins came up the winners. Perhaps it was the glare from the Astrodome's ceiling, or perhaps it was the wizardry of Miami's quarterback Bob Greasy that kept the Oilers confused. At any rate, Greasy scrambled recklessly, used his blockers well, and made himself generally obnoxious to the Oilers. His second period pass to rookie Jim Mandich, number 88, gave the Dolphins a lead they never relinquished. In the third period, it was Greasy to number 81, Howard Twilley, and Miami led 17-3. The Oilers finally got themselves together, and behind the receiving and running of tight end Alvin Reed, number 89, they seem determined not to become the victims of an upset. When number 32, running back Hoyle Granger, took over the chores, he finally managed to crash in for a touchdown. But it wasn't enough, as the Miami Dolphins served notice that when they put it all together, they're going to be tough.
Well, Tom, this is a big week in the NFC Central. Minnesota at Green Bay and Chicago at Detroit. We did a little better with our picks last week. Kansas City over Baltimore, both of us like that. What do you see about these two games?
Well, Minnesota, I think, is getting a tremendous job out of Gary Cuozzo. I believe he's proven that perhaps Cap doesn't have to come back, and the Vikings are going to be tough to beat for Green Bay.
So you picked in as Minnesota?
I think so, yes.
How about the other one?
Well, the Detroit Lions right now are the toughest, most physical team in football, and the Bears will have Gale Sayers back, and that might not be good for Gale Sayers.
Might not be, because Detroit has really been playing well. Tough team. At any rate, we'll be back next week to show you what happened.
I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summerall, and we'll see you next week.
This week in pro football has been brought to you by American Motors and your local American Motors dealer. And by Hager Slacks. They just fit better naturally. Promotional consideration is provided by American Motors, makers of the bold new 1971 Javelin, with styling so hairy, we even risk turning some people off. Javelin by American Motors. This has been a color feature presentation in cooperation with NFL Films, through the facilities of Hughes Sports Network.